Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of ICTV Headlines. As usual, I'm your host, Dijana Kunovac. There were a lot of expectations for the UNC basketball team heading into the 2013-2014 season, one of them being the emergence of big man Joel James. Now, former players called him a beast in the practices they had with him. Current teammates were saying he was definitely the most improved guy. So here we are, nearing the end of the regular season, and James is playing an average of about 9 minutes a game, averaging just 2 points a game. So what exactly is happening with the development of Joel James? Well, Rob Harrington joins us here in studio to discuss all that. He's been covering Joel since high school. So let's start off with that. Before he got to Carolina, the thing I think a lot of people don't know about Joel James is that he didn't start playing organized basketball until his sophomore year of high school. So it's been about 5 years. This is his 5th year of playing organized basketball. Give us a little insight of his history in high school and his AAU career, Rob.
Well, from the beginning, it was very clear that he did not have a very instinctive package of skills. You know, he could do certain things, but it didn't come naturally to him. But that's not uncommon for a big man, especially because he started so late. I think for me, going into the injury he suffered this year, he was coming along about like I thought he would. Now, since that injury, he has not been the same player. I don't know whether it's a physical hangover from the injury or it's more just he was out of sync because of it and he lost confidence. I think that's a big issue for him. But I think he, to that point, had come along slowly and shown at least some signs of becoming a player who was picking up the game at a steady rate. That's taken a bump here since the injury, and that, for me, looking ahead, I think that's what I am primarily curious about, is what exactly is he going to be these last 2 years.
We'll get to his future and what kind of impact he's going to have on Carolina basketball in a little bit, but he started off the season in the starting lineup. I think he played 13 games in the starting lineup, and then Kennedy Meeks took over his position. And you and I have talked about Kennedy and Joel and the dynamic there a little bit, and I think everybody knew that they were going to be the ones starting for that 5th spot. What do you think it was about Kennedy that had him surpass Joel throughout the season? Was it the injury? Because I think that's when Kennedy got his first start.
I think that definitely had a lot to do with it. I think the fact that he was much farther along in terms of skills. We talked about instincts right off the top. Kennedy is a very instinctive player, and he certainly has his limitations too. For me, I think that competition is somewhat resolved going forward. I would be very surprised if Kennedy is not entrenched as a starter next year as well, because he gives them some things offensively that James does not, and probably will not anytime real soon. I think now, if we realign our expectations for Joel as a backup center, I don't think there's anything wrong with him from that perspective at all. There was no guarantee he ever would start over Meeks. For example, the game last week against Duke, Marshall Plumlee comes in for the Blue Devils and gives them 15 or so very solid minutes off the bench. I think that's something that Joel can do and should be expected to do going forward.
That was going to be my next question. You kind of got to already. Do you think expectations of James were set a little high? Because people look at his body. He lost 60 pounds before he even got to Carolina. They saw the progress. I think he tweeted a picture or Instagrammed one of his new body and everything. And people were so excited about this big kid coming in and just taking over. And they don't realize sophomore year of high school, that's only 5 years of organized basketball. How much of an effect do you think the expectations for him have had on him?
I think you raise a great point about his body. Because your first instinct when you watch a player, you evaluate a player, if you're a scout like me or just a fan or a coach or whatever, is body type. And there is absolutely hard to improve on James's body type. You know, once you watch him play, you see, okay, he's much more developmental than maybe I hoped he would be. But in terms of his physique, you would expect him to come in, and beast is a word that you mentioned, and that's something I think that he should aspire to. But it isn't there for him yet naturally, and so it deceives you, because you see him walk out and you see him, he runs okay, he doesn't jump great, but he's all right, you know, not terribly deficient in any of those areas physically. And so more it's just putting it together for him and his own confidence that he knows how to play the game beyond actually knowing how to play it, I think has worked against him some right now.
So do you think it's just time that he's going to need to develop? I think people were kind of expecting a little too much from him too fast and too soon. You know, get him with Jonas for a year, get him with Coach Williams for a year, and he'll be set to go. But again, I go back to that. It's only been 5 years. Is time going to be the answer for him? Is that what's going to need to happen for him to improve?
I think that's going to be a lot of it. You can't develop a full complement of skills in the arsenal over 2 or 3 years, or however long he's been playing now, just a handful of seasons. I think the other thing, too, is that had he arrived behind a Tyler Hansbrough or a Sean May, no one would be stressing it so much.
Yeah.
You would let him develop at his own pace, and then the calibration would be maybe as an upperclassman he'll be able to help out. Sort of like a Leslie McDonald, for example, who didn't arrive with those kinds of expectations. But because Carolina is an interior scoring program, and because they had been so deficient when he arrived in last season and going into this year, I think people wanted him to be more than he was ready to be at that point.
Well, do you think Joel is progressing at the rate that he, I guess, should? Do you feel like he's progressing fine? Or do fans have anything to worry about?
I thought prior to the injury he looked a lot better than he did a year ago. Now, recently, I'm sure that he's dissatisfied with his play, too, because he is capable of better. He has been better this year.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how he'll respond to another offseason. Maybe now that he has become accustomed to the dynamic with Kennedy, if he's going to be the backup, if he's a 15-minute per game backup, he can still get a lot of nice things done. Conceivably, he could still have a professional career, maybe not in the NBA, but somewhere. He doesn't have to be a starter at Carolina to be a pro, and I think that's where his eyes and his focus should be.
In ACC games, he's only averaging around 6 minutes per game, averaging less than a point per game. Where do you think skill set wise are his best skills? Is it on the offensive end, on the defensive end? I use the phrase bull in a china shop because I feel like that's exactly what he is every time he's on the court. He's so big and he moves around so aggressively. So where do his strengths lie? On the offensive side of things, on the defensive, rebounding?
The one thing he does have that you can't teach is a nice touch on his jump shot. He can hit a facing shot. To me, when I see him passing up those shots now, like he did one the other day, I believe against Wake Forest, that's when you know that he's not feeling great about his game. But he can hit that shot, and he has a nice touch, and he comes in off the bench totally cold against Duke, hits a couple of free throws. That bodes well for him because it's really difficult to teach that. Defensively, I think that he can become a better interior defender. I think that is a court awareness issue. It's an experience issue, and again, instincts. That's not a strength for him right now. I think it should be. He does get some nice defensive rebounds. He's certainly not shy of contact. That's
true. I would be shy to go up against him. He is terrifying to watch when he rebounds sometimes. Who did he give a bloody nose? I don't even remember what game that was, but sometimes watching him, it's like he doesn't mean to hurt the other guys, but he's just so big. It's like, it's a little terrifying. A final question. What kind of impact do you see him having not only on this team, but for the rest of his time here? Do you see him ever being a starter? Is he a role player? Where does his legacy live at UNC?
I think his identity is shaping up more along the lines of a Warren Martin, someone like that. Not the same size, different style. But if Meeks is going to be the starter for the remainder of James's career, which I think is a very real possibility, then how does he make an impact in the minutes that he does receive? It's not like Meeks is going to play 35 minutes per game. I don't think he can even play 30. I think 25 is about as high as he'll go. So if he has 15 minutes, James, at center, and he's going to be guaranteed those minutes. Now, next year it may not happen because Desmond Hubert will still be there. But in those minutes that he does get, can he be a defensive force? Can he give them some energy as a rebounder? Can he get a putback or hit a face-up jumper? I think he can do all those things. It's not asking him to be a primary scorer at any point. But he can have a really important impact on those teams if he'll focus on the things he does know how to do and then build confidence from there.
That was going to be my ending point. I think for James, the big key is going to be confidence. I remember having a sit-down interview with him last year and him saying that it was kind of tough for him because he had Coach Williams in his ear and then he had this player and this coach and everybody, and it just was too much for him to handle, that he needs just Coach Williams to tell him what to do. And you can tell he gets overwhelmed, but I think confidence is going to be key, and then, like you said, overcoming the injuries, because I don't think I realized how much of an effect that's had on his game until you brought it up.
That's right, and he also was not healthy during the offseason last year, and that hampered his progress some too. I think just having a healthy few months, a fresh start on a new season with a little bit more of an expectation for how much he might play, I think all those things will really help him a lot.
All right, well, that's going to be it for this edition of ICTV Headlines. Rob, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure. Have a good one, you guys.